So for today, I have set up a database within a shared environment, and that way we'll be able to access it both from Daylite as well as from Daylite Touch. And I'll have Daylite Touch open in this iOS simulator. That way you can kind of see how they can connect and how all that works. Now, when you do get started, I just want to point out a couple quick notes. Before you'll be able to connect to your database, you do want to make sure, first of all, that you have a database that you can connect to. That's where you'll see this in this list. And in addition, of course, you'll want to make sure that Daylite Server Admin has been turned on. So to do that, we'll just need to authenticate, and that's just entering your actual Mac username and password. And then, but before we do that, I just want to jump over. Actually, let's toggle that. And just so that we can connect from Daylite Touch as well, I want to make sure that I've turned Daylite Touch Server on as well. Now, there is you do want to make sure that you're pointing your database, pointing the Touch server to the correct database, but that's all done during the setup of the Daylite Server Admin. So if you want to just revisit a quick introduction to that, you can do so at any time. Just go to the Daylite page, and then when you go to try Daylite, just scroll down to the actual download page, and then we have the video, the Daylite Server video on the right hand side. And that way you can open this up and you'll be able to see the walkthrough of that. So let's just close out of here for a moment. All right. So let me, I'll just minimize mail as well. So now that we have Daylite Server Admin turned on, I can open up Daylite. And let me just go back to the main window. So we're here at the welcome screen. This is where you'll be able to log into an existing database. Now, in addition, I just wanted to add you can create a personal database. This is if you're only going to be accessing it from a Mac. You're not going to use Daylite Touch or anything else, just from a single Mac. And of course, you can also log into the sample databases. And these are predefined databases with some categories, keywords, pipelines, all the stuff that's customizable in Daylite. But this way it gives you a little bit of a starting point, or if you want to just be able to take a look at the program and kind of get a better sense of how things work and how things look with some information pre-populated. Now again, since we already have the database, I'm going to be logging into an existing, and this is where you can choose the database you're going to be connecting to. Now, in some cases, you may have multiple databases. I typically try to recommend keeping everything in one. And the biggest reason is because if you're going to be using Daylite and Daylite Touch can only connect to a single database. So this way you'll have the ability to see everything in one place. And with the use of permissions and visibility, you can control who can see what. So if you did have some private items that you just wanted to be able to keep in there so that no one else can see it, then that way you can mark that as private, and you'll be able to enter that there as well. Now again, I'm going to be logging into the database that I've created. So what we're looking for here is the name of the database. So in this case, we see my list of shared databases. So I want to see sample general, and I want to see the one on my machine. Now in my case, I have quite a few more databases, and that's just because my colleagues also have Daylite Server Admin running. But as you can see, as long as you're on the same network, Daylite will automatically be able to pick up on any databases with Daylite Server Admin. So we can select the one on my machine, and now just enter the username and password that you set up when you created the database. Now, for today's webinar, I will be logging in as Mary Jennings, so just don't let anyone get thrown off by that. Alright, so now that we're connected, and of course we can tell the database we're connected to by viewing the top of the Daylite window. This way you can see the name of the database and also the type of database. Now if you were connecting to a personal database, this would say personal instead of shared. So if you do want to set up your evaluation so that way you can access both Daylite and access your information both from Daylite and Daylite Touch, you'll want to make sure that you're connecting to a shared database. Now, before we get started, I just want to kind of give you a quick run through of the window. That way we all have a sense of what we're seeing. Now, at the top of the Daylite window, this is where you can easily create a new task, a new appointment, a new note, a new contact. So this is where you can quickly create a record. Now, you can also customize this. So if you want to include some different options, you can move them in here. It's just as simple as dragging and dropping. So if I wanted to move something out, I can drag it away. It does a little poof. if I want to add something back in, so maybe I decide I want to get groups back in there, I can decide where I want to put it and organize it the way I like it. So this way, once I have these here, if I'm ready to create a new contact, I can just click on it, and that way I get a new contact record, so that way I can get started. Now I'll just cancel out of here for now. We'll talk about contacts in a moment. Now, just below the toolbar, just on the left-hand side here, this is where we have the Daylite Navigator, and this is where we can switch between the different areas of the program. So instead of having one program for your contacts, and another program for your tasks, and another program for your calendar, Daylite's going to keep everything together in one place. So you'll be able to jump to your contacts, your organizations, your projects, your opportunities, your groups, your tasks, your appointments, and your notes. And we'll be able to talk about these different objects and talk about them a little bit further for you. Now, below the navigator, this is what we call source lists, and this is what allows you to control what the information you're viewing. So if we're taking a look at our organizations, if I wanted to see every single organization added to the database, I can view organizations. If I just want to see the organizations that my user has created, or I should say I'm the owner of, I can see my organizations, and of course I also have a recent view. Now in addition, you'll be able to create some other lists. You can create both plain lists and smart lists, and it's just done so just by clicking on the little plus sign. And again, we'll be able to talk about these a little bit later once we have a little bit more of a foundation. So to the right, and this is a layout that you'll become very familiar with. This is what we call the three-pane view. And what this three-pane view is a list, so that's this first column, a linked, and that's the objects that are linked to the first column, and then the business card view of that linked item. So as an example, if I was to take a look at Alpine Ski Shop, I'd be able to see the different linked contacts. So I can see Alfred's the designer, I can see Diana's the owner, I can see there's an opportunity linked. But if I click on the different objects, I can actually get the business card of those linked items. So this way you can get information rather quickly. Now below here, this is where you get information relating to the actual list. So in this case, we'd have the business card of the organization. We'd be able to see the activity, which is going to give you the complete history in chronological order. So anytime that you create a new object for this record, so as an example, if I was to create a new task for Alpine Ski Shop, and we'll just leave it very basic for now, we'll see it get added to this activity. So this way when you go back again, you're going to see everything in chronological order. And of course, in addition, there's also forms. Now forms are customizable from within the preferences. But you'll be able to set them up ahead of time and apply them to a record. So this way, if you wanted to track certain information, you can just select it from your list, apply it, and then it's just going to be available right from within the form section. And again, the different fields and the different types are customizable right from within the preferences. So I just jumped there. I should go through the actual menu for you. And of course, you can go into forms and fields here and set these up. And of course, you can also choose what object the form applies to. So if you want this for contacts or opportunities or organizations, you can check that off. So in terms of the view, I just want to take a moment just to get a quick sense of how everyone's following along. If anyone has any specific questions relating to how Daylite's presenting information to you, if you can just bring it up right now, it's a really good time to kind of address this. Again, just because this view is going to be very common throughout the rest of the application. All right, looks good. So I guess the first thing we'll start off with is managing your contacts. So let's go back to contacts for a second. And now that we're back in contacts, we're seeing everything from the contact point of view. So if I'm viewing a contact, I'll see what's linked to the actual contact itself. So here we have an organization. We also have a couple groups. And you'll also notice, just to link to the organization, in brackets says president. And what this represents is the role. So as an example, I'm just going to grab Amin here. And I'm going to actually, he's already part of that organization, so I'm going to grab Amy instead. So I'm going to drag Amy to Sunshine Media, so I'm just doing a drag and the drop. And you'll notice my mouse now gives a little plus sign. So this gives you an indication that you're about to do an action. Now you'll notice a little window pops open, and this says a new role and what role will Amy play in Sunshine Media. So now I can set the role, and of course again all this is customizable within the preferences, so this way you can make sure all this information applies. But now we can set their actual role. So in this case, let's say Amy's going to be the graphic artist. Now we can set if you want to set the title of the department, we can do that as well. If this is going to be the default role for Amy, so if this is going to be her main position, we can check this off, and we can hit OK. So now what will happen, if I take a look at Sunshine Media, so I'm going to jump over, so you'll notice Daylite switches to the organization view. Now when we're taking a look at Sunshine Media, we'll see not only that Allie's linked to it, but we'll also see Amy as that graphic artist. So this way, not only do you know that this contact works at this organization, but you know exactly how their role is. So again, if maybe you're dealing with someone that has multiple organizations they're a part of, or maybe someone that has multiple roles at an organization, you'll be able to track this with the use of the linking and by setting that role. Now, in addition to being able to set the roles, obviously you want to be able to track your contacts and their information. So let's quickly create a contact. We'll just call him Jim Bob. And we won't set his email yet. We'll leave that in a moment when I talk about the integration with Apple Mail. And we'll set a phone number. So say we just got a voicemail. Now, in addition, when you're creating a contact, you also have the ability to create an organization. So this way, when you're creating the contact, if you know the organization already, you can get it right into Daylite. So in this case, it's going to be Bob's Apples. And you'll now notice that there is not an existing Bob's Apples. So this way we know it's a new organization as well. So we can ask Daylite to use the contact's phone number and address. So if we have the address as well, let's just say 123 ABC Street, and we'll leave the rest blank for now. Now, when you're creating a contact, you can also classify it. So this way you know who this individual is. Now again, all this stuff is customizable from within the preferences, so you can go to the classification and you can set up the categories. But what this gives you is really a visualization of who this individual is. So if this was someone that I mark as a lead, there's also going to be a color associated with the contact. So if I just drag the window over, if we look back at the main Daylite window, we'll see those different colors associated with each contact. And that's the category that's been set. So in addition to being able to set a category, you also have the ability to set keywords. So this is where you can actually apply multiple keywords. So maybe there is certain terms or additional information that you wanted to track, you'll be able to tag the contact with those. So let's just say we got some there. Perfect. So now we have some information relating to the contact, but this way the information is always going to be with the actual contact record. Now, one field that I also like highlighting is the show details field. This way, if there's certain information that you always want to keep with the actual contact record, you have the ability of entering that here. Let's just say a very nice individual to deal with. Son is a baseball player. Just to throw some little thoughts in there. So now that we have an actual contact record for Jim, the next activity is going to take us to that contact. And of course you have a few different options there. You can choose to go to the organization, or you can create follow-up items, but for now I just want to be able to jump to the contact so we can see this. So now we have a brand new contact record for Jim, and this way we can start tracking any history with him. Any phone calls, any emails, any notes, all this information will be able to link to Jim's record. Now, one of the things that you'll want to try to get a habit of is selecting the contact ahead of time. And this way, if you are creating a new task or a new appointment, this way you'll have the link automatically established. So you'll notice that both Jim and Bob's Apples was pulled in. Now, the reason Bob's Apples was pulled in is that's just a setting that you can set up, but that goes back to setting the default rule. So if this is something that you wanted to automatically link to the organization as well, this way you can keep all your information together. So since we had a voicemail from Jim, what I'll do is I'll just go through, say, a quick outbound call. We'll touch base on logging calls in a little bit again, but just to go along with this workflow. So we'll just say call to Jim. Leave it nice and simple. Now, when you're creating a task, you can also modify the type of task. And this again just gives you a little bit more of an indication of what it is. We'll set this as an outbound call, and the indication will show up in the actual history when you're viewing that. And I'll highlight that in a moment. Now again, you don't have to fill out every field when you're adding something. There's different purposes and different reasons why you might want to use location and visibility. But again, we have some resources that explain this further. In most cases, location can be closely tied to David Allen's Getting Things Done. It's a methodology that really focuses on doing what you can where you are. And again, we have a document on using that if that's something of interest to you. But the nice thing about it is you can kind of set this up to tailor it for your own needs. And again, if you have any questions along the way, we're here. But a really good guide that I'll highlight in a little bit is the implementation guide. And it's a guide that will actually ask you questions to help define your workflow. And that way to really focus on what you want to focus on. So we're going to set this, we won't worry about a due date because we're just doing a call. We can classify this if we want. Maybe we want to track all our sales stuff or all the research stuff, or maybe we have support stuff, or maybe administrative work. If this is something you want to see later on and see how much time you're spending places, you have the ability to do so. But again, you don't have to set a category. It's kind of more of a preference based on what you want to track and what you kind of want to get back. So within the details, this is where I'd enter all the information from the call. So just say wanted to touch base, requesting follow-up in a week's time. Now, once you're done the call, you'll want to make sure you hit the complete date. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is I had the start date already checked. That's because I've set up a default value in the Daylite preferences. So just touching base on that. Within your default values preferences, this is where you can set defaults for each object. So if I go into tasks here, I can see that I automatically set the start date. So this way, if you do something on a regular basis, you can save yourself a little bit of time. And again, when I'm creating a task, typically I want to capture that start date, and that's at the point I'm creating it. Alright, so now that we have the call, I want to make sure that I'm also logging something for the follow-up, because chances are with everything that I'm going to be doing between now and next week, I'm not going to remember. Now, when you complete a task in Daylite, you have the next field, and this is where you can create a follow-up task or an appointment. Now, the difference between a task and an appointment, a task is day-oriented. So if this is something for a specific day, throw it in there as a task. If it's something that's time-oriented, so say at 12 p.m. you wanted to log in for this webinar, this is something you'll throw in as an appointment, because this way it shows up on the actual calendar. And again, we'll talk about this in a little bit. So since Jim just asked for a follow-up next week, we'll just set up follow-up task and hit OK. Now, when I hit OK, what this is going to do is not only create the task and link it to Jim, but since I've asked Daylite to create a follow-up task, it's now going to open up a new task, so this way I can set that follow-up. So for the due date, I'm just going to type in next week. And again, there's different shortcuts you can do here. You can type in next week, you can type in today, tomorrow. You could do things like, so as an example, if you knew you were going to touch base next Monday, you could just type in Monday, since that's next Monday it's going to fall in. So there's different ways of adding it, of course. You can also use the traditional date picker. So if you just want to see your calendar and select a date, you can do that as well. Now, if you wanted to make some notes, in most cases, the task title is good enough for me, and then I have the history of the contact. So I really don't do much here, but if you want to throw something in, you can. But what I definitely do recommend is also setting a reminder. I mean, I'm going to show you something in a little bit so you can see all your different tasks and whatnot. But again, I know that that additional reminders is often key, and of course you can set multiple reminders. So if you wanted them fired off different time frames prior or after, you can do that. And of course, there's also different types of reminders. Everything from messages to messages with notes, sounds, emails. If you want your computer to talk to you, again, there's different types of reminders that you can set up. Now, one thing I do want to add, definitely set up your notification preferences. And the biggest reason why is if you have a certain type of reminder, a certain set of reminders that you want for all your tasks or appointments, all you'll have to do moving forward is set this up and then simply check your checkbox. And really that's what makes it so easy. So as you complete your item, if you want the reminder, just hit the remind me, and then you can close it and move on to the next item. Again, now that we have the initial call logged as well as the follow-up, I can forget about this because everything's going to be linked and attached to Jim's record, and I'll have all that linked together. Alright, so going back, since we're still, I don't want to leave contacts quite yet. I still want to touch base on a couple things. But going back, I mentioned those lists earlier. Now, one of the nice thing about lists is obviously you can create a list. You can drag whatever contacts you want to it. So let's just say working list. So if I want a bunch of contacts in this list, maybe I'm going to be working on these individuals today, and I don't want them to leave this list until I actually remove them. I can do that, and in this way, of course, we're going to have those contacts here now. Now, in addition to creating a plain list, you can also create a smart list. And a smart list is based on specific criteria, and this is criteria that's based on the information from the records that you've added. So, as an example, let's just do a really simple one. I have a couple here, but let's apply a different category. Let's say, okay, show me all of the people that I've entered as a personal contact. So these are all the people that I've classified as personal. So let's give that as a title, personal. And if I hit create, what this will do is only show me those contacts. So right now we just have 2. But if I go back and say Jim Bob happened to be an actual personal contact, I could change this to personal, because this is what I'm using for classification. And now that this has been updated, I don't even have to worry about adding them to this personal list. Because this list is based on that criteria, it's going to be updating automatically. So this is definitely one thing that you'll definitely want to take advantage of. But smart lists expand much farther than that. Actually, let's change this. Let's say you wanted to see all of the different contacts that you're meeting with next week. So let's just say meeting next week. Since you'll add meetings as appointments in Daylite, you're going to base this contact list on appointment information. So you can say, okay, show me all of the contacts that have an appointment with the start date is next week. Now we'll take out this personal category, because that way we don't want to see that. We want to really just see every single contact that we're meeting with next week. Now that I hit save, we'll have a list of a couple contacts here. Now, both these happen to be, I can't remember what purple is, sorry, Media Magazine contacts. But as you can see, there's an appointment in here for next week. And again, with the other contact, another one. So this way, if you wanted to maybe it was Friday afternoon, you wanted to get a sense of who you're meeting with next week, so that way you can make sure that you're ready for it. Again, you can just have a smart list based on that information, so that way you don't have to go digging. I know it'll just be on your calendar, but again, I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of what kind of criteria you can utilize and really take advantage of it. And again, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. You can do everything from category, appointments, address information. So if you wanted to see everybody in a certain city or state or country, or based on zip code information, if you want it based on groups or categories or keywords, notes, projects, opportunities, tons of different criteria. Now, since we talked about contacts, again, I just want to make sure that everyone's clear. So we do treat organizations as separate entities. So this way, when you are working with a contact or organization, you can link information respectively. And that's really what's the key thing at the end of the day. As an example, you're not actually physically speaking with Market Circle. You're going to be speaking with myself or one of my colleagues. We're people, so we're going to be contacts. But at the end of the day, it's important to understand what role we have, what role we play at Market Circle, and maybe down the road, I mean, not so much in this scenario, but maybe you're dealing with a company. They have a bunch of different contacts. And then down the road, they change positions or change companies and so forth. You'll be able to start compiling this history. Maybe it's someone that you can still do business with. You don't want to lose that valuable history. So this way you can just kind of keep everything together and organized. So since we talked about contacts and setting up roles, I also wanted to touch base on setting relationships. Again, something else you want to track. So just like setting up a role, by linking 2 contacts or 2 organizations together, you can set a relationship. So in this case, again, it's just pulling up from the preferences. If you know someone's an assistant or a colleague, maybe a spouse, someone's related, maybe a referral, this is all stuff that you can track with the use of relationships. So we'll just set this as assistant. And again, this way, when we're looking at the contact now, not only do we see the organizations that it's linked to, but we'll also see those contacts. There we go. Now, again, not only is linking this information giving you an idea of how everyone relates and whatnot, but it also makes it very easy to be able to navigate and find what you're looking for. So if you know you're dealing with someone from Sunshine Media, you can jump there, you can see the person, you can jump to their contact record, and now you can view their history, the last few emails you had with them, the last few calls. You're going to have all that information readily available. Now, on the topic of searching, the one tool you'll want to use the majority of the time is the find window. And this find window allows you to search for contacts, organizations, projects, opportunities, and groups. Now I'll show you a nice quick way of opening this up in a little bit, but this is the one window that I use really 95% of my day. If there's a certain contact or someone that I'm looking for, you don't even have to enter a complete name. You can do names. Sorry, that was kind of silly. I should add a little bit more than that, but you can do names, you can do cities, you can do organizations, you can do address information. This allows you to quickly search for records very efficiently. And of course, in addition to the find window, there's also a global find that you can use. So just go through the edit menu. There is a shortcut to make it a little bit quicker, but the global find would allow you to search every single object in Daylite. But again, the quick find is the one you'll want to use the majority of the time. That way, once you find the record, you can just jump to them, and that way you're going to have all that information right in Daylite. Now, since we talked about the logging calls and appointments, let's talk about the calendar. So the calendar in Daylite gives you the calendar view of all the different appointments that you've added. Now, you can view the appointments section of Daylite as well. This will give you the information in that three-pane view, just like we were seeing earlier. But if you want to see it in more of that calendar view, you can just jump to the calendar. Now, within the calendars, there's different things that you can set up. Now, let me expand this a little bit. Now, one of the things when you first open up Daylite, you'll probably see a calendar a little bit closer to this. So this is, again, just showing you all the different appointments that you've added. Now, for myself, I like seeing a little bit more information in one place. I want to get more of like a home view going. So I want to see everything that I have going on. Now, within the calendar, you can toggle the do list. And this is where you can now include tasks, projects, and opportunities within that calendar view. Now, what makes this handy is, depending on what you're viewing, so if you're viewing the entire month, you'll see everything for the month. Whereas if you just view a day or a week, you'll just see everything for that day. Now, within the do list, you can also toggle a few things. Now, I'm not a big fan of showing completed. I don't want to delete it. I don't want to get rid of it. But I do want to make sure that I'm not seeing my list of things to do. That's really what I want to focus on. So I don't show that, but I do show overdue, and I do show details. And the biggest reason being is the second I add a task to Daylite, and again, this is going back to what I was mentioning earlier when we were talking about the reminders. The second I add a task to Daylite, I don't have to worry about forgetting about it because I go to this view every day. So I'm going to see, oh, you know what, March 6th, I had a task that was due. Well, hopefully I responded to this much sooner than this point of the month. But again, I'm going to know that I have this task due, and I'll be able to handle it. Now, the reason I also show that detail pane is because this way you get more information about what you're viewing, whether that's an appointment on your calendar, whether it's a project or opportunity you're viewing, or a task. And a perfect example is this very first task, pick editor. Well, what am I doing? What does pick editor mean? That really doesn't mean anything to me. But since I can view the detail field and see, okay, it's linked to the design web page for Macworld presentations, now I know that's what I'm picking an editor for. Now, since we have that link, I want to see everything relating to this project to make sure I know exactly what's going on. Now, if you were just to click on this project, what it's going to do is open up the actual project record itself, which is good if I wanted to update some information or see something. Then, of course, I could always click on this little arrow at the top here, and this would jump to the project. But for me, that's too many clicks. What you can do instead is by holding down the Option key on your keyboard and then click on the link, what it's going to do is just take you to the project that we've just selected. And this way now I can see everything from that three-pane view. I can see who's involved, so Chuck Darwin's the client. I can see the details of Chuck. I can go to the progress view. I can see exactly where this project stands. I can see the different tasks and appointments. But now again, I now have okay, I have to pick editor, then I have to get the raw video files to an editor, then I have to drop off the videos to an editor. So as I do this, say, okay, let's just use Miriam, since she's just in the list for now. But again, this find window is what really makes this so handy. So if I wanted to search for another contact, so let's do this quickly. I'll just bring up the complete list. since Amy is going to be one of those individuals that we're going to pick on today. So Amy wears quite a few hats. Not only is she that graphic artist, but she's going to be the editor. She's going to be the editor in this project. Now again, this is where you'll want to make sure that you have all the different rules and stuff set up. That way, as you're establishing these roles, you can actually choose the correct term. So in this case, since we don't have editor, I'm just going to use operations. And this way now we'll know moving forward who I've selected. So I can mark this off my list. And now I can focus on getting those raw video files to Amy. Now going back to my calendar, you'll now notice, since we don't show completed tasks, that pick editor is off my list of things to do. So again, this way you can always focus on really the next task at hand. Now, I know I've talked about earlier about being able to log calls, and I just mentioned being able to pull up the find window. So let's talk about the global hotkeys that you can utilize. So I'm going to go into the Daylite preferences, and if I go into hotkeys, this is where I can set up global hotkeys for both the find window and the new task. Now, what a global hotkey means is I can do this from anywhere on my Mac. Now, to set it up, it's just as simple as hitting change and then hitting the key combination that you want to use. So as an example, I just hit Command Z. In this case, I actually use a 4-key combination because I want to make sure it doesn't utilize any other shortcut in any other program. So that way mine's a little bit more complicated. But again, the idea behind this, if I'm working away maybe in Safari or maybe I'm listening to some music in iTunes and the phone rings, I want to make sure that I can start logging that call. So just by hitting my shortcut, I can pull up a new task now in Daylite. So this way, again, because I have the default value set, it's logging the call. I can mark this as an inbound call right now if I'm ready. But what I want to do now is figure out who this is. So if it does happen to be someone I'm dealing with, and Amy's giving me a call because I just let her know that she's going to be the editor, I can now link this to Amy. And of course, if I want to make sure that I'm linking it to the project for Amy as well, the nice thing about Daylite is, again, using drag and drop, I can just easily link this information together. And of course, if you knew you can use the search to pull up the projects as well. But again, it's just a simple drag and drop to link that information together. So now I can say call from Amy. Just wanted to let me know she got the videos. I can complete it, and I'm good. Now I can just quickly, obviously, hit OK, and I can mark these off as done. So now we're good there. But again, the global hotkey allowed me to quickly pull up the task very easily to look for Amy. And of course, again, you can also use that global hotkey to pull up the find window. So if I knew it was someone calling, I'd be able to pull up the individual first. And then using the contextual menu in Daylite, which is just a secondary click, it's also known as a right click if you're coming from the PC. This way you can, and again, this is a list that's customizable, so you can tailor what you want to see in here. But if I wanted to create a new task for this call, I can actually just create it from within there, and that way I already have it linked to the individual it's for. So just a couple nice little tricks there to make things a little bit easier when you're logging calls and to-dos. But again, even if you just have a quick thought that kind of strikes you, oh, you know what, I got to go do this. Again, it's just as simple as popping that task open, pick up mom, set the the due date, say tomorrow, and you can set a reminder. That way you don't forget about it. You're good to go. Nice little simple things like that. Now, another key thing, and this is going to be a common action that most businesses do every day now, is working with emails. And the one thing you'll want to make sure that you have is tight integration. And this is where we take advantage of the Daylite Mail integration with Apple Mail to ensure any inbound or outbound email is linked and stored with a contact in Daylite. So the way it works, and you can trigger an email from within Daylite, you can send an email right from Apple Mail. Either way, you'll be able to take advantage of the integration. So if I wanted to send Maurice an email, I can just go through the action menu, write email. There's also a shortcut to make it a little bit quicker. And what this will do, it's going to open up a new email to Maurice in Apple Mail. Now you'll notice, in addition, there's a little drawer that gets added on, and that's the Daylite Mail integration drawer. Now, before you can utilize the integration, you just want to make sure you connect. And what this means is, first of all, you'll want to log into your Daylite database. And once you've done so, you'll be able to connect the two together. Now that they're connected, you'll actually see Maurice was pulled in as a contact. And that's just because this email address matched. And I'll talk about that in a second. So let's just say, follow up, wanted to say hi. Thanks. We can send that off, and of course it's going to be linked to Maurice's contact record, so that way when I go back I'm going to see that. Now, since I just mentioned that it matches the email address, in some cases you might receive an email from a contact that you haven't spoken with, or maybe you receive an email from someone that maybe they send it from a different address. Maybe they have a Gmail, Hotmail, their business account, what have you. So when the email does not match an existing record, Daylite will give you an option. So you can say, okay, add to Daylite, and this will allow you to do a search for the individual. So let's do a search for Jim Bob. And it happened to be Jim Bob who we gave a call to. It was the guy that left the voicemail at the beginning of the webinar. So now what we can do is simply add this email to his contact record. Now, if this was a case where it was somebody new, I would also have the ability to simply create a contact record for them. But in this case, since it's Jim, we'll just add the email to him. And you'll now see DMI has pulled in Jim's contact record. So this way I know this email is going to be linked to Jim. So I can open it up, I can respond to it. Thanks, here is that information. Now, depending on the type of information you send on a regular basis, you might be able to take advantage of Daylite's letter templates. So before I send this email, let me just jump back to Daylite briefly. And one of the other options when you're sending an email is to do a merge, and that's based on a letter template from within Daylite. So these templates are predefined, something that you can set up ahead of time. But if I just take a look at this, actually, let's go in there for you so you can see what this looks like. So what this is a predefined template with what we call merge keys. And what the merge keys are tokens. So that way Daylite, this information is pulled from Daylite. So the simplest example, instead of just saying hi with no name, you can actually pull in the contact record's first name. So what that means is, if I go back, when I'm sending this memo to Maurice here, and I'm going to open up in the email client so you can see how this looks, it's taken all that information and it's populated it based on the actual contact record. So again, this goes back, the more information that you can put in, the more information you can get back out. Now, going back to sending an email, I want to highlight how you can actually leverage those letter templates from within Apple Mail. Now, within the DMI drawer, at the very bottom you have a little gear. And this gives you a couple different options. One is it gives you the ability to create new tasks, new appointments, new opportunities, and new projects from within Apple Mail, and I'll show you that in a second. But it also gives you the ability to take advantage of the merge. So to do this, what you do is you select the contact that this is for. In some cases, maybe you have multiple individuals, so this way it knows who it's pulling it from. So you select the contact, you select where you want to put the information, and then you go to the little merge option, and now you can choose a template that you wanted to use. Once you hit merge, it's now taking that same information and just putting it into the body of the email. So if there was a certain set of information you wanted to give out on a regular basis, it would just be as simple as selecting that template and then firing off your email. Now, going back to those additional options, now I know I already created a follow-up earlier, so we don't have to do it again. But if I wanted to create some sort of follow-up or maybe create a project or opportunity for Jim, what I can do is I can, first of all, again, make sure that the contact's selected. In this case, I want to capture some of the information from the email, and now I'm going to create, say, a new task. This way, I can create the new task, I can log some details in the email so I know what it's for. If it's something that I'm going to be following up with in the future, maybe next month, I can set that as next month. Again, I can set my reminder, and now I can forget about it. And of course, again, going back to Jim's contact record, we can now see there's quite a bit more going on. We have the initial email from Jim, we have a form that was created, we have the call for Jim Bob, we have the email I just sent, and we also have the follow-ups. So again, all the information now is going to be in chronological order, so when I go back, whether it's a week from now or a month from now, I'll be able to pick up from where I left off. And of course, the other big thing about the integration here is just being able to turn emails into actionable items. And it's going to save you quite a bit of time having to kind of jump back and forth. And more importantly, at the end of the day, everything's, again, it's going to be linked in and stored together. Now, we talked about notifications. So when a notification does fire off, the notification will open up. You also have a couple of options where you can have the icon on your dock bounce. But this little 4, if you look, I don't know if you can see that, but the little badge number in the icon represents how many new notifications there are. So again, just an easy way of knowing if you have a notification. But what you'll see here are any reminders. So these would be reminders that you set for those tasks and those appointments. You can also receive delegations and delegation updates. And what these are so as an example, if I open up this task here, I'd be able to delegate this to another user. So if I know this is something that my colleague April will handle, I'll be able to delegate it to April, and I can even ask Daylite to notify me of changes. So what happens here is, first of all, April's going to receive a notification for this delegation, and then as this gets updated, I'm going to receive the delegation update saying, hey, this has been completed, this has been done. So this way I don't have to follow up Daylite notifying me of those changes. Now, since we talked briefly about projects and opportunities as well, I do want to talk about them. I know we are getting closer to 1 o'clock, so I want to make sure we still have some time for questions and answers, and I still want to show Daylite Touch. So I'll just briefly talk about opportunities and projects, and then of course, if there's any questions during the question and answer period, we can talk about it again then. So opportunities in Daylite are designed to manage a chance to gain revenue. So this would be managing your new business. Now this can be a business that you feel you have a good chance of winning, or might be something that you want to track just because there's a chance of getting the business. So this is something once you've qualified somebody. And what the idea behind the opportunity is a place to keep everything together. And again, so if you're working on an opportunity, you have a bunch of different tasks you have to do, or there's a bunch of different notes or research you need to collect, you can make sure that when you're doing this stuff, you're linking everything back to the opportunity as well. This way you know not only who it's for, so let's just say it's for Jim Bob again. In this case, I know it's not, it's for John Bine, but actually let's keep this a little bit more relevant. So we can link this to John Bine. Again, this way, the idea is you're linking this information back to the opportunity. Now, within an opportunity, there's different information that you can track and fill out. Everything from forecasted close dates to probability. You can track the state. So this is whether it's won, lost, maybe something that's been abandoned, maybe something that's been suspended. But in addition to the state, you can also track the state reason. And this becomes very valuable information for you, because what you'll have the ability to do, going back to those smart lists we were talking about earlier, you could then create a smart list for opportunities saying, okay, I want to see all of the opportunities that I've won. So when you see all those won opportunities, you can now see the state reason. So we can switch to a list only view. This is another view in Daylite that you can utilize. And we can include the state reason here. So we'll just hit size columns to fit. So we can see why we won these. And of course, the flip side, we can see why we lost them. If we know we have a bunch of opportunities we lost because maybe it was a certain price factor, maybe it was a certain service that we don't offer, anything along those lines, that's information you can track and then react on. And of course, you can also track value amounts, so you have the estimates, so you know what the value is of the opportunity. And there's also reports and print layouts you can utilize based on this information. So again, there's a lot more to Daylite, and again, the focus is really on your objectives, those opportunities in your projects. So when you do win business, you have the ability to create a new project from an opportunity. So this is something that you can trigger from the contextual menu. You can also trigger it from the create menu. When you create a new project from an opportunity, you can set the name of it, and you can also bring in linked contacts and organizations, tasks, appointments, and notes. So if you want to bring the history of an item over, you have the ability to do so. And this way, you can use a project to make sure you deliver on your promises. And again, projects and opportunities kind of work along the same lines. Both have pipelines, so a pipeline allows you to track where or the different steps that the project will go through, and the stage tracks exactly where it is. So at the end of the day, when we're taking a look at the new project we've created, you'll see exactly where it is. And this is, of course, where you can also take advantage of activity sets. An activity set is a predefined set of tasks and or appointments. So if I wanted to apply a new activity set for this project, I'd be able to choose the set from my list, and again, you can set this up whether you want it to be for the entire project, maybe you just want it for the particular stage you're working on. Again, you can set this up in the preferences, so this way you're simply adding these tasks and appointments to the project you're working on. And of course, again, the complete how-to-dos and what it is can be found right within the help menu. So if there were certain terms that you heard it, or if certain things you wanted to look into further, again, ask us, but the information is also just right within the Daylite help. So I want to talk briefly about Daylite Touch. So let me open up the iOS simulator. And again, this is the application that's been designed for the iPhones and the iPad. This way you have the ability to connect to your database. Now, it doesn't have the same feature set that Daylite for the Mac has. Daylite Touch is designed as a companion application. But what Daylite Touch is going to give you, sorry, I'm going to have to reconnect. This is pointing to an old database. So let me connect to the new one. So this is just downloading its own database. So this way you don't have to have, again, a constant connection to the server. If you're out and about, you'll be able to quickly get your task or appointments into Daylite Touch, and that way you can have them sync back to your Daylite database. But again, from within Daylite Touch, it's designed to give you a home screen. So kind of like what we've seen within the do list within Daylite, you'll see everything today, tomorrow, and the next 7 days. But the nice thing about Daylite Touch is not only do you get to see those items, you also get that linked information as well. So as an example, this follow-up with Diana is linked to this website for Alpine Ski Shop. So now I can jump to the opportunity, I can see where it stands, I can see the value behind it, but more importantly, I can also see that activity. So I can see all the tasks here, I can see the appointments, the notes, and I'm going to have all that information right at my disposal. So as an example, if I knew I had a lunch with April coming up, I can jump to April, I can see the recent notes we had, so I know exactly what we're talking about, and I can do that all from within Daylite or Daylite Touch. So Daylite Touch, in addition, gives you access to your objectives, so those projects and your opportunities, so this way you can focus on those. You also have access to your contacts. Now, one thing just to add, when you first connect, Daylite Touch syncs based on a sync list. So if you go into the contact settings for Daylite Touch, you can choose to not sync with a sync list, and this will sync all contacts and organizations. But again, this way, if you wanted to pull up a contact, you have the ability to do so, and you still get that same linked history as well. So you can see, okay, they're linked to this organization, and you get to see all the different linked people and so forth. So moving along, you also have your calendar. So this will be able to see that information in the calendar view. You can see what days you have items with the little icon there, and of course you can also get your list of what appointments you have for that day. So as you go through them, you can again get all that additional information, so that way you know what's going on. And of course, Daylite Touch also gives you access to your tasks, so you can see what's due today, what's not done, your someday tasks. So maybe you're sitting around and you don't have anything to do. You can go back. Oh, what are those someday tasks? You can base them on your categories. You can base it on locations. Again, some of this applies to David Allen's getting things done. But if you just want to track where things are happening and things like that, again, you have the ability to do so. You can see what's been delegated, so those delegations, and of course you also have access to your done list. And again, when you go through a task and view that information, just like with those other objects, you get those the link details as well. Now, in addition, it's important to add, you also have your notification window. So if you do receive a delegation or a reminder or an update, you'll be able to get that right from within Daylite Touch. So thanks again, and thanks again to Carolyn. She's been typing away for the last hour and a bit, so appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions moving forward, please do not hesitate in reaching out.